I would like to welcome you all to our panel. As FIDI introduced, we have a great mixture of panelists today, technology experts and also industry experts who are quite passionate about technology. Just a reminder, our topic today is technology for industry and how will new technology affect us. We will have some Q&A session at the end of our panel, so please feel free to ask your questions at the end of our panel. I would like to start with asking, why are we talking about technology at the first place? Why is it so important? Can I start with Patrick as being an expert?
Sure. Thanks for coming to this morning's session. I hope you all had a fun evening last night. Technology in the past has really been a competitive advantage for those who used it, but now it's becoming so ubiquitous that the people who don't take advantage of it are really at a competitive disadvantage. And that transfer is going to happen more and more in the years to come. So I think this, people talk about the Amazon effect with the Amazon website, and there are many others, but the expectations of customers is just getting higher and higher and higher in terms of delivery schedules and traceability, transparency, and that's all using technology. So the people in this industry and all industries who don't try to keep pace with that will increasingly find themselves at a disadvantage to other companies in the same industry who are providing a higher level. So I think that's a good starting point and why we all have to, including all of us, have to look at technology and how we can leverage it not only now but in the years to come.
Thank you, Patrick. Gerard, do you have something to add?
Yes, for our industry, technology is absolutely necessary in the future to collect data and to bring it faster and more secure to our customers and all our people who need data. So for data transmission, we need technology.
Yep. And also, I would like to have the idea about our industry. How do you see it?
Yeah, so technology, I think, is a broader word, so I can look at it from two ways, basically. It's by embracing it, it helps us to be more efficient and drive cost, basically, out of the equator. On the other hand, basically, opens up to the consumer in a different way and in a faster way to speed communication and make sure we're all aligned. And I think embracing technology is what we need to do collectively to sustain and to make sure our businesses are run in a smart and efficient way to what the customer wants, because at the end of the day we're there to serve the customer, and the customer is changing and is embracing technology on a high speed at the moment.
Thank you.
That's very important that we talk about technologies, that it increases our efficiency. It gives benefits for all of us, but also we shouldn't forget about the social side of this question. These words like artificial intelligence or machine learning or robots, they're becoming part of our life. But we never thought about, for example, those drivers who are driving the trucks, and in the future very soon there will be safe driving trucks. So what we're supposed to do with those people? Or people working for the call centers, what we're supposed to do with those thousands of people which will be maybe unemployed? And among scientists, there are actually 2 points of view about it. So some people, they believe that there will be happy end, that human and technologies, they will integrate and kind of create the new era of sustainability. But some people, they believe in technological Armageddon, that the massive technological revolution will come and nobody knows what's going to happen. So those things we should consider and think about it, how we should manage that, which frameworks, which regulations we're going to put on that.
If you look back at the history, technology has been driven growth for all our existence. And sometimes those are small increments, which all of us benefit by increased productivity. We receive better products, better services, and make our life easier. But once in a while, there is a technological revolution with a big technology discovery, like electricity, the steam engine, the transistor, internet. And a lot of people believe that now we're on the verge of another revolution with blockchain technology which is why so many people are excited about this. So I think technology will affect us, and as Patrick's presentation of Monday showed us, it's up to us to leverage the available technology to take most advantage of it. It will come, and the first one who embrace that will benefit the most.
Can I offer one
Please.
more thought, just very quickly? The problem is stayed the same. The customer's thinking, where's my stuff? And that problem has existed for decades. It's always been the same problem. The difference today is that everybody knows that the technology is there to answer that question better, right? And so if you're working with one company as a customer and they can't answer that question, everybody knows that the technology exists to be able to ask that question. And I think we all need to be conscious of the expectations of the customer around the whole world, that these questions should be answered quickly and easily, and what technologies can we use to do that.
So, I mean, we all know that it's very important to keep sustainability, to invest in technology. What do you think about the level of technology usage of a mover? What do you think about our industry? Are we using enough technology? I mean, maybe you being in the industry, how you see it?
Yeah, so it's not doom and gloom, but in all honesty, I don't see rapid, let's say, engagement. So there are companies taking the front run and they take it on, but the massive majority is still basically in the waiting seat. And when I'm talking to companies, I think it's also a lack of understanding and just not the real knowledge on what to do. So I think there's so much out there that a lot of people are a little bit paralyzed to say, okay, what can I take on? And the burden of the cost is there and not really overseeing what to do. So I think, but that's also an opportunity, I think, also for FIDI to see what FIDI could do in that spectrum, basically to assist those companies to be digital, to be, be there tomorrow. But overall, I think it's people should be getting engaged, so get to know what's out there and get to know products, services being offered. And there's a couple of them here at the conference, but and much more out there. So I think, that's overall how I look at it.
I mean, we know that there are many companies having different systems. Some, they have the in-house implemented, but we have also, as an industry, seeing different suppliers offering different software. Yeah. Do you think, I mean, considering the membership, there are different sizes of companies. So do you see it's more...
Yeah, I can talk about that because I come from a small company in a small country, far from everything. So I know the reality of Latin American companies. And by being at these industry events, I have learned about the reality of other moving companies in other countries. And it's a completely different situation for most of us. The industry is very fragmented. We rely on our relationships together. And some companies are big multinational and have thousands, hundreds, or millions of dollars to invest in new technology. But there are others, like our company, like hundreds of more are spread around the globe that don't have the capability of having those systems in place. So they don't know, as we've said, they don't have the knowledge, the resources, or the time to look for that. It's not the money. Softwares are not really expensive right now, so they don't know how to do it. And that has an effect in the entire industry. If one of the big companies that has full modern IT systems wants to use an agent that doesn't have the same capabilities, it will not be possible to achieve full transparency. Not possible. So their entire chain is not IT, does not have IT modern platform. So I believe it's an industry problem and that we can solve or help drive as an industry effort.
And Maria, you know both sides, sorry.
I'm sorry. Nowadays there are sensors available that can track and trace everywhere what it is. You can track the temperature of your load, you can track shocks, you can track humidity, but it's also the start of new technology with Internet of Things, etc. We are in a complete new area of sensor technology and RFID technology, and it will launch from now. So I think it's a large opportunity for our industry to make a step ahead and to serve our customers with all kind of information they need.
If we look actually at the global trend, and the global trend currently is moving from products to the platforms. We see the biggest companies like Uber or Alibaba, they do not have their products. They do not own their cars or goods. They don't have goods at their storage, but they have the platform. And those companies are the biggest, and they make huge turnovers. And I believe that we also should move in that direction, in direction of the creating global platforms which will be available for all users. That's a difficult task to accept it for everyone, and this probably could be done only with the support of organizations like FIDI and with understanding of every user that there is a need for that.
I'll just volunteer briefly. I'm not in the moving industry, as you all know, but I think it's worth mentioning. You know, I go to many conferences every year, and every industry says, "Oh, we're so behind. We're archaic, not like other industries." They all say that. I did an event recently for a pharmaceutical company. These are companies that are large technology companies, and they feel like they're behind. So don't think that this industry is the only industry that might feel that way. But the reality is that in any technology, as it propagates, the largest companies, the big international players, they will spend millions of dollars to develop their own technology. But then eventually those technologies migrate into the middle section, what they call the SME, the small to medium enterprise space, which I think probably many of you are in that area, through the enterprise software solutions. So ERP, CRM, all these various softwares that people have, and many of you probably use already. And I've worked with many ERP companies, SAP in particular. I do a lot of work with SAP, and they consistently say that 95% of their customers use a tiny fraction of the capabilities of the software they have already paid for, right? So the lowest hanging fruit for the SME space is just to get better training on the software you already have and try to leverage that software in a more effective way. You don't have to spend millions. Just use what we have better. In many cases, you already have the data. You already have good software in many cases. The question is, how can you use it to its full advantage?
Thank you. You mentioned about blockchain, and this is something that we've keep hearing. Patrick also talked about it during his keynote speech. What does blockchain mean? I mean, what are the opportunities for a mover? Can you
Yeah, I
talk
can
a
start
bit
with
about
that.
it?
Blockchain, as I said, is a new technology. Bitcoin is what created it. It showed what the capabilities are, but people begin realizing that it was much more than that. And it's a network technology. We're a network industry, and it allows us to trade between each other without depending on third parties, without depending on RMCs or move management companies. It's direct between us. I think talking about blockchain confuses a lot of people. So maybe, I believe it's not necessary for now for this industry to talk about blockchain. It's good to know about it, but I think the main issue in an industry to get there is it's the connectivity that we have. If we don't have connectivity in our industry, blockchain doesn't have any sense. It only makes sense if we work in an industry, in a network.
You mean connectivity, like everyone using the...
Everyone is capable
To connect
to
each
connect and to connect their system, so when we create a file and send a shipment, our destination agent can review the file and avoid double entry, and that means avoiding delays because the BL was written in the exact same way that's supposed to be. You have visibility to your client, and if that's a net, I mean, we all trade between each other. It's not just one-to-one, it's one-to-one, then for the other, and then together. So if we all become using it, or a sufficient size of amount of companies use it, those companies will be able to provide their clients full visibility because they have all the tracking in place.
Yep.
So that can be achieved either connecting each individual members or nodes in the network. That's very costly, and that depends on each company. It's very costly. Or create one middle platform where everyone can connect to. That's an alternative that is much more cost effective.
And Maria, I also know that you are quite experienced.
Yeah, well, what is blockchain itself? It's simply a distributed database. It's a distributed ledger. And then the blockchain gives an opportunity to store the whole entire of the transactions and to verify the entire of the transactions of the blockchain. All transactions and all operations between users could be visible in the system. And one very important feature of the blockchain is irreversibility. That means that if you put any data in the system, you cannot change it. It's not possible to tamper that data because it works in the way that all transactions and interactions, they are closing in the block, and then the next block is creating, and the next block has information from the previous block. And that's why it's called blockchain, because it's chain of blocks. So that means if you want to change information in one of the blocks, you need to change information in all the following blocks, and it's almost impossible. That's why the system is very strong. It's not possible to hack it. And that creates the trust between users, between all the participants. And of course, the main question probably how we can benefit from it. We understand that it's still nascent technology. It's maybe too early to talk about implementation of blockchain in this industry, and there are a lot of challenges which have to be addressed before it gets mass adoptions. But already the blockchain can be used for transactions, for peer-to-peer transactions without using the bank, without using SWIFT, and those technologies, many of them are open source. For example, smart contract can be used for that. It's like the programming code where it's written who has to pay and when, and it's open source, it's possible for using. Or stable coins, they also could be used for payment. It's a new way of cryptocurrencies and so on. So there are already opportunities existing which are in the market. And we should probably think about how we could adapt it, how we can use it in our life, in our business.
Well, that's another, again, my perspective is seeing this particular industry as it relates to all the other industries in the economy. And the biggest reason blockchain has not been adopted aggressively by other industries is because by definition it's an ecosystem play. In other words, you have to include your competitors, you have to include your suppliers, you have to include your customers in the blockchain. That's how it's, the architecture, that's the way it's set up. Most people don't want to do that. And then I come to this conference, and all of you are competitors, and you all know each other and love each other, and you're meeting the whole time, and no one comes to the sessions because you're all having meetings outside. This is absolutely not common. It's not common. But from my perspective coming in, I'm like, my gosh, this is, I mean, it's tailor-made for using this type of technology. And so you should know that just as a you know, kind of a statement of fact or whatever, a theory, but a good theory that says that this is well suited to your industry. And the second thing I'll provide or I'll volunteer in this context is that you know, you don't worry about trying to understand everything about it. And the idea behind blockchain, by the way, is to get more information and do less to get it. Like it's not about doing more. What it's about being willing to try something new. That's what it's all about. Blockchain, it doesn't have to be complicated, and the idea is that it requires less work to have it operate, not more work. So the future we're describing is a future that I think you would like better than the reality you have today. But in order to get from here to there has to be a willingness not only from you as your company, but as an industry and as a community to say, yes, we're willing to try something new. And there's many people in the industry, Alvaro in particular, who's really interested in building this, and there are people who are going to invest their time and look for resources to build it. But once it's in place, I truly hope that this industry of all industries will try it, because it's uniquely well suited to the way you're already operating today.
Absolutely, because our industry must be very friendly to each other, and we're all friends here. But what also very important is in our industry is that we have tons of paper on every desk of an international moving company, and you can replace that completely.
So can we summarize as like if there is a blockchain in our industry, there will be less SLAs, all these, you know, additional contracts, data privacy, you know, can we say that? I mean, less paperwork, administration, or?
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Once you fill in a form, you can use it. You can use it all over the world,
Does
and
it also-
everybody has the same. You can't change it anymore. It's perfect.
And maybe the FAME audits might be even without being present by the audience. Is that something
I
that?
think that's possible in the future if we are able to connect, if we are able to make the full process connected, then there's no need for auditing because all the SLAs will be translated into smart contracts on a blockchain. So if some companies connect to this platform and use these protocols, there will be no need for auditing. But that will come probably, I don't know, no one knows, 5 years, 10 years from now. But as Patrick said, we can start with something very simple.
But that's a good insight. So again, excuse I mean, I'm not an expert on this industry, but I've heard a lot about the FAME auditing process that you all go through, and that costs money, right? I'm sure you all know it costs money to do that. Well, there is a promise in the future that, or a possible outcome in the future that blockchain could effectively replace that, which would reduce the expenses involved. So there's a direct financial incentive to, you know, again, don't worry about the details. There's going to be certain people who are going to dig into those details and figure out the privacy and the cryptography and all those stable coin versus a regular cryptocurrency. Don't worry about those details, but know that this is something you can embrace. It's well suited for your industry, and it may replace this expensive auditing process, or at least simplify it down the road.
The very good example of that is the project between Maersk and IBM. It's called TradeLens, and they actually agreed, they involving around 80 organizations and 20 port operators to integrate and to use a blockchain and to have actually the data transparency, because currently the simple answer on the question, where is my container, it takes 5 people and 10 steps, and with a blockchain you will need just 1 person and 1 step. And what Maersk, as a big organization, what they are doing, they're now trying to integrate. And I think that's the biggest issue, that's the biggest problem, to integrate all the participants. Blockchain could be the motivation, but you need to unite and to agree on the standard rules, on simple standards for all users. And then, of course, you can use a blockchain as a tool, as a great support for that. But that should be kind of common strategy.
Well, what you will see anyway is that there's a lot out there already, let's say, under the surface. There's a lot of things happening in the auditing world, and what you say in the transportation world, and also on the client side. If you look, let's say, at other industries close to us, you see what's happened there or happening there, I think you will see that coming quicker than we all think. So my expectation is that, and some of the bigger companies are working on all kinds of platforms and all kinds of integrations, that at a certain point how this industry is evolving, that there will be dominant systems coming and platforms coming based on a blockchain technology. And blockchain sounds indeed what you guys say, and it's a bit scary, and it's not my core, let's say, but let's say from a platform perspective, I think everybody can understand that we're moving ahead from, let's say, managing shipments to using a platform basically where people integrate and with APIs can connect each other. So, and I think that's the first step we're going to in the next 12, 24 months, where there will be bigger platforms being launched, and those will be the first trials basically going into the blockchain. And I think that's the open invitation, I think, to FIDI to see how can we connect to that and make sure that FIDI plays a role there. And again, what Alvaro says, I think help the smaller companies to really understand and maybe create kind of toolkits for them, let's say, to be there when it's all happening.
And maybe even less layers throughout the whole process because it will
Yeah.
make the end customer and the
Well,
provider.
RMCs are building, they say they are building, some of them say they are building the blockchain. You don't know until you see it, but I think we should do it, we could build it first and we'll make our industry stronger. So there are many layers. I remember a move that was the account, the relocation management company, the booker, then another booker. So there were 4 layers. And when something goes wrong, talking with them, it took a long time. And those layers add value now. They need them because they have to consolidate information. But with a common platform, they don't make sense. They don't make sense. So I think layers will be much more simple, maybe 2, but not 4.
Yep.
You know, for any of you who are really interested in blockchain in this industry, the case study that she just mentioned with Maersk that involved 90 organizations, 20 or 30 ports, and also UPS, both of them have done very interesting proofs of concept pilot programs using blockchain. You can go to Google and search for Maersk blockchain, and you can read all about it. You can go and search for UPS blockchain, you can read all about it. That's what I did, and I think it's very useful. Any one of you could do that on your own time and get a really good idea of not what's possible in the future, but what's already been done today. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can just copy what they're already doing and just do it in our industry.
And one thing to mention there, which makes it very practical, for example, Maersk today is working also in changing their mind on how they're going to address their audience, because today we still book via freight forwarders, etc., to get our shipments done. Maersk is opening up today already for them to basically book like an airline a container on their ship. So that's the next step, which will come in the next 12 months, where we should be able to book a container on the ship just as an individual company or an individual consumer even. So that's the next step they're going to bring, because they're building these blocks. You know, that's just another block basically they're adding to the chain, and that's coming as we speak. So it's quite interesting.
So what can we do adapting technology in our industry?
Starting.
Oh yeah.
Starting.
Starting. Simply.
I think it's important to have an open mind, to be engaged on what is happening, to ask organizations, industry organizations, to talk more about it. And I think it's also important to look at your own systems, your IT platforms, and ask your IT guys if they have the capabilities to connect quickly to one platform. Many of you are using software vendors. There are only a few of them that are more dominant in the market. Some of them are very modern, some are built in an old infrastructure, but it should be easy for them to connect. So I think it's important for you to ask them, do you have this capability to connect?
Yeah, and I think personally it's also leadership. So it is taking accountability and take the lead. And I think that's for business owners key in this day and age, to take the lead and get involved. Because otherwise, you miss the plot. And use your talent around you with young folk to gather around you, but you have to be driving it. So, so that's very important.
Yeah, as a leader.
Yeah, and I see a lot of reluctance basically in that, because as companies, because we're all family-based businesses, we're in that transition mode. So it's very important to stay relevant on that and make sure we have the right people driving that. But it should come from leadership principles. And if I talk about digital strategies and I go to the audience, I don't believe there will be a lot of companies say, well, we have an outlined digital strategy yet ready. Where that is necessary, literally in the next, well, I would like to say today, but you need to be working on that, because you need to have an eye on the future, because our customers are changing. They will not be coming, let's say, how we are doing it today. That will really change in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So it's important to be out there.
Any last words from?
Yeah, I would like just to add something. we see that all new technologies, we're having the resistance. If we bring anything new to the company, we always get resistance from the employees. They don't want to use it. And the answer, why it happens, the answer is quite simple, because it's our nature. Our brain biologically is lazy. And our brain doesn't want to do extra work because it has to consume the energy. And that's something normal. So we just probably should push our brain a little bit and say, hey, let's work a little bit and put some efforts and motivate your employees and help them and educate and support to use new technologies, not only technologies, but in general, like to have any technological Fridays, for example, at your office or something like that.
I would just encourage, in the simplest context, go to your 5 primary partners, other companies in this industry that you work with the most, and just have a conversation with each one of them. What are you doing with blockchain? Have you done anything with it? What are your thoughts? There's 150 people in this room. There's 600 people in the hotel. If you all had those conversations, all that audience would be included in the conversation. And that's where it begins, is just talking about it and getting used to the idea. And one of those 5 may have done something, and so you can learn about it. And that's how it spreads. It's just a willingness to try something new.
Absolutely. And for large companies, it's a pretty easy step. Like companies like Fuhrmann, Team Relocations, Asian Tigers, Santa Fe, maybe that's not a good example, but there are steps you can easily make to make your processes simple and be there with blockchain.
Okay. Thank you very much. Before giving the floor to our audience for the questions to our panelists, we actually try to keep it short to be able to get your questions.
Correct.
I would like to thank to our panelists for their valuable time and input. And can I ask for a round of applause?
So do we have open mics? Yeah.
Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you very much. You spoke about the reluctance in our industry to adopt those new systems and those new technologies. Could it also be because we have a very particular industry where the personal touch is extremely important? It's personal goods, and it gets into your DNA after a while that you treat it with a personal touch as well. That reluctance that maybe there's a fear of losing that personal connection with the customer by having taken over all technology. Would that play a role in that reluctance?
I think you will have more time for your customer.
Yeah.
Now you're spending time on all kinds of forms and paperwork, etc. And it's gone. Once you do it one time on the right place and time, you have much more time for your customer.
But I think the fear may be holding people back based on a misunderstanding, that maybe they think embracing this technology will somehow threaten that personal connection. So, and that's just an education process, that they're 2 completely independent things. What it really means is that you have to do less of the work that you don't like. In theory, we're not there today, but that's the promise, is to get rid of some of that back office administration work, which would allow you to have more time to be with the customer.
Yeah, and I think you're right, yes. I think that's part of it, and it's part of it is also coming through the fact of the unknown. So because we don't really know what it is, so let's keep what we have. At least we know that's working, and it's a bit scary what's out there. And I know one day when social media came, we as a company also, well, we would ban that, and people could be on Facebook or on LinkedIn only in the breaks. In this day and age, our people are working on social media 24 hours a day. So, and communicating with clients. And the first time I found out that people were on Facebook with their clients, I was like, who? And now it's getting the norm. So that is how people communicate. Yeah. So we need to be also open for other ways. And yeah, it's learning by doing.
But that's true that at the beginning it will take some time. You would need to understand to understand how it works, to educate your employees. But the outcome, the results of that will be great, because that will be super efficient, and you will have more time for your customers, that's for sure, after a while.
I have another answer for that. I think also one thing that prevents companies to do is that no company can do it by itself. So what are we building? What are we doing? And that's hard to understand because it's different. That's what I said a couple of questions ago, that this is a new technology. It allows to connect networks in a different way. And that's not, it takes time to understand. No one knew 30 years ago about the internet, about how are we sending or receiving emails, and now everyone is used to emails. It's in our lives without noticing it. So I think this will be similar to that. And as I said, it's not something a single company can do by itself.
Just out of curiosity, and there's no obligations or commitments based on this question, but how many of the people here today would be curious or interested to participate in a proof of concept or a pilot program of some kind? So look around. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
more than
So there are
50%.
people, right? We have, I mean, those of you who put your hand, it's awesome. Like, talk to FIDI, right? Say, I would like to participate, or whoever the organizations are. I think that's fantastic, and that's where it can all start.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Rob, please. Oh, sorry.
Hi, thank you. Maria, I think, talked about global platforms that are available to all users. Were you referring to users as in companies participating in the network, or were you also talking about the customers? How can we use technology for the customers?
But it depends on what you wish. It could be that it depends on how would you build that platform. It could be the platform for agents with access to the customers, but with some restrictions, because your customers, they don't have to see the whole internal information. It depends on how you build that system, but the opportunities are great. Yeah, so for both actually. Or if you would like to have it only for communication between agents, but without communication, your internal communication, that's also possible.
Just as a background, you can have what's called a private blockchain or a public blockchain. And in between the two, a hybrid would be like a consortium blockchain. So different types of blockchains. Within any one of those three, you have different levels of encryption. So most of these blockchains have what's called a private key and a public key. So you don't need to worry about specifically what that means, but what I'm hoping you'll walk away with is that based on how you build it, the design of it, you can decide that this information should be private, this information should be public, or this person can participate or this person can't. That's all, it's just a question of how you lay it out. And it's when we get that initial group of people that says, yes, we want to try something, that conversation happens at that time. How do we want to organize this? Should it be a global platform that everyone can see, or should it be a private thing that we test? I think it makes sense to test it as a private blockchain first, and then perhaps go beyond that. But those options are all there. It's just a question of design.
Rob?
I know that there's a lot of...
We can hear
So that
you.
everybody can hear. Yeah,
I have a booming voice, but it only booms that direction. You know, I think this is a great opportunity for FIDI to get involved and sort of be at the lead to bring all of us together and begin to implement some blockchain-driven applications in the moving industry. But that's also, let me put it this way, what sort of resources would FIDI need? Do you have to go out and hire IBM and Watson to, set something for you? Is it something that people themselves can do? Do you need, how would you go about it? What sort of resources do you think it would take?
Maybe if I could answer, I think FIDI should first take a dive into the network, because I think there are already cool initiatives within the FIDI group. So I think, there are companies out there and some folks in the room here who are doing really cool stuff. So I think it's important to look inside the organization to see what's out there and see what you could share and connect. Because there's a lot of things coming from within this group already. I think that is important for FIDI, and to see what can we embrace and maybe accelerate and help to facilitate. And on the other end, yeah, look ahead. Let's say, where can we help, let's say, the industry at large, maybe with external resources. And yeah, it would be an interesting one.
I think that IBM, it's very expensive to do that, and I don't think it's an option for our industry, but it's not necessary.
Yeah.
I think this can be achieved on a small scale, like a test with a group of people that understand. And there's a lot of different initiatives in the blockchain space that are mix different expertise from different areas that are also necessary for this. Yeah.
Okay, when I said IBM, I was exaggerating to try and provoke some specific ideas, because it's so vague and nebulous what we talk about, and so IBM is something that we can get, is some way we can sort of put our teeth into something. But so you think that we have the expertise and the skills within the FIDI organization to do it ourselves?
Yeah. I think there are folk out there who have a lot of good ideas, good vision, and I think, you know, let's get people together. And indeed, what you said, this is a unique industry, Patrick, where people share. You know, we're competing today and we're working together tomorrow, and that will be always out there. So, but we should work, and I think the drive will come from commercial organizations, because I'm not a believer that industry organizations themselves will create technology which will facilitate the business. I think it will come from the active commercial companies who are going to drive platforms into the equator. And I think it's making sure that FIDI can play a role in aligning that and making sure all the values and like fame and things like that could be a key part. And going back what Alvaro said, I think, you know, to the smaller companies, be that resource for the smaller company to help them understand what is out there and how can we facilitate in getting you up to speed.
Well, actually, the blockchain is a software. So in order to build any software, yeah, you need a team of developers, you need a team of programmers. That's a must, of course. But not necessarily you will need to use IBM or those the top level companies. It could be a small group of developers who have the possibilities to do that. So it's possible. There are this kind of people on the market. So yeah, depends on what you want.
And she works with a team of so to give you an idea, just comparing, you know, blockchain to big data, and I mentioned big data in my session if any of you were there. To do a big data initiative, a proof of concept, you spend millions of dollars to try and figure that out. To try and do a blockchain POC, proof of concept, or a pilot, it could start at $20,000 or $30,000 and go up to maybe $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000, which, relatively speaking, is very cheap.
Sign
right?
that.
So,
you have to sign that.
Prove it. But, I mean, but she works with developers in Russia that specialize in this. Alvaro works with a team of people that he's learning more and more about what's possible. I have connections with a team in Armenia and Pakistan that code on Ethereum private blockchain. So there's many developers. So there will be some resources required. So let's say, for example, 10 companies volunteer and say, we want to be a part of this test. I think it makes sense that those people contribute some money, so you have some sort of a budget. But don't think that it has to be millions of dollars. It doesn't. You can do these things quite cheap, but it will take some resources.
Sure.
I want to comment something more about it. There are also innovations about business models that were created because of blockchain technology. A lot of blockchain projects are funded with tokens, with cryptocurrency, but it's not a currency, it's a token, something that has a value, an asset. So there's a new way of funding. The traditional way of funding a project was through angel investors or venture capitalists. And now there's huge projects that are funded by issuing these crypto tokens, and people that are interested and believe in the project, they buy these tokens. So that provide funding for the development of a platform. And some of them have been very successful, raising more than 100 million, or in one case, $1 billion, because people were so interested in that. I don't think our industry has the scale to do that, but since there's people interested, I think there could be a model for a blockchain platform that funds itself like that, in a distributed way, with all of us, or the ones who wants to participate in the first place, putting a little contribution on it through these tokens that have some value. And those tokens increase their value when the network becomes bigger. So the earlier adopters are the earlier who get rewarded for that. That's it's a breakthrough on business models that the blockchain technology brought. It's different than IBM's project, where you have IBM and Maersk. We have Maersk controlling everything. That's a private blockchain. They decide who can join. And during all this years, they've been doing it for, I think, 1 or 2 years now, and they only achieved to enroll 90 different providers. So the proof is right, the technology is right, but there's a problem with adoption because it's centralized. And one of the key ideas of blockchain is that it's decentralized. The best blockchains are not controlled by anyone. No one controls Bitcoin. So maybe this industry is distributed. Maybe there is a way to found it in a distributed way where no one owns it, or maybe all of us own it in a small percentage.
Thank you, Alvaro. I think we can have one more question, Max.
Yes, I'm not very much in this blockchain, so looking to what FIDI is now presenting, I found that very interesting. FIDI is more focused on the international business, agent to agent or groups to groups, whatever. My question, you are far more expert than I am. If I take a lot of companies out of the FIDI family, they do not only stay for international businesses. So they have warehousing, they have other things, commodity, whatever. So how would it be possible to have a FIDI, whatever project? How can that be implemented in other fields of businesses which make companies survive?
Maybe I can start. What you, I think, allude to is, for example, records management and other types of businesses, office moving, domestic moving. I think all segments have similar projects on its way. It's much more consumer focused, and overall the consumer is getting the power. So whatever we're doing, it's going much more to the consumer base. And there's a lot of things happening in the field of storage, of course, and in the domestic field. And a lot of self-service solutions coming in play. So I think that's something as a company you should look at. How can I adapt self-service solutions in the storage space, in the domestic space, and others which can help. And towards what can FIDI do? Yeah, I think FIDI can be a resource. I think FIDI is an association, so it's there for its members. So my role will be get involved. I think that's the key. I think we shouldn't wait till the board comes up with something. I think it's up to the companies. Get involved in your association, get involved in your companies, and be out there and talk to each other. So that's probably my suggestion.
Let me add a little bit. Domestic moving is just a part of international moving. If we're able to solve the international moving network, then it's a small change maybe to use it for domestic moving. So I think the role of FIDI, that has been the role and the main advantage of FIDI, is setting the standards and auditing you on the standards. So FIDI has the strength on raising the bar, or try at least to the pilot with setting the standards for this kind of thing. There will have to be some standards that our companies will have to adopt. That's the first step, very first step, set the standards. And IAM is working on that, I think, with FIDI. So that will be important. That's part of the FIDI leadership that we need.
Okay.
I'll offer a little more. When you start a project like this, the idea is to start as narrow as possible, like the most specific, small little use case. And the one I described 2 days ago involved sending some cotton from Texas to China. So that they built this blockchain. So let's say here in this industry, the group of people get together, FIDI's involved, we hire developers, we build this blockchain infrastructure. So this thing exists. And then you take one order, right, that's going from one place to another place and say, okay, let's try to do it this way instead of the way we've always done it. And everyone's watching. And you upload the smart contract, everyone's seeing it and they're looking at it and the whole thing goes through and maybe there's a couple of problems, but you figure it out and you get to the other side and it's done, right? That's how it starts, right? And then you figure it out, you make some adjustments, you probably have to make some improvements, and then you try a second one, right? And it starts incredibly small. But once you find a way that works and it's smooth, and you're just like, okay, that particular type of order works well. And so maybe you have a dozen or 2 dozen or 100 that you do through. And then you expand it. And so eventually you can get into domestic jobs or entirely unrelated jobs perhaps, because blockchains become kind of like a public utility. It just becomes a thing that's out there in space that you can use and you know it's trusted information. And it starts in a small way, but if it works, then the scope of that facility, the scope of that utility expands as it's used for more and more different use cases.
Time-wise, I'm sorry, we are closing our session. I know it's last day and early in the morning,
We
so
will have
we
one more
thank
question.
you. Sorry.
One last
We
question.
got 2 minutes.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Can you
As software
Thank
guy,
you.
so it's important to
just say it
Receive
really
a tough
loud?
one.
Say it loud, we'll repeat it.
I'm afraid it's actually more of a comment than a question. I think this is a great session because it talks a lot about the promise of what's possible with one technology, but I think we need to take a step back and understand why we're doing this. And BPU addressed this briefly, but I think the focus has to be on the end consumer here. Who are we doing this for and what problem are we solving? Blockchains is one technology that's available to us to solve certain problems, but in the end it's about how do we communicate with the client, how do we address their needs, how do we do this, you have hashtag future of work, right? How do we collaborate and communicate in modern ways today, and what are the expectations of consumers as they work with us? There's all kinds of technology available, including blockchain, that can facilitate this in a better way.
Right.
But I think if we focus on our end customers, a little bit less on our back office operational aspects, I think we start to understand what we need to do as an industry to stay relevant and solve these problems.
So
Thank you
his
very much.
comment was that why are we doing it, what's the end goal, and the focus should be on the customer and what's the benefit to them.
Exactly where we started. It's to fulfill the demands of the customer better and faster and more secure.
You know, there's a possible future where a regular person could go into a grocery store and pick up an apple and scan the barcode with their cell phone and see exactly where that apple was grown, picked, where it was stored, the whole thing, it's all right there, right? And we're not there today, obviously, but that's the goal where we're going to. And in this industry, it would be wonderful for a customer to have their number and they can check and they can see exactly where it's been and where it is right now, and it's all in a ledger. So that's, in my view, that's the end goal.
not only the customer needs to be satisfied, although I think this solution will also satisfy the customer by having more visibility. But there's one of the first papers on blockchain, the economics of a blockchain, talks about 2 different effects. One is the cost of verification. So as Patrick was saying, it's very easy to verify information very quickly. Now it takes a long time to verify going through the documents. I mean, imagine how much time can we save with that. But the other, the most revolutionary, is the cost of networking. So we are a network. What does that mean? Well, I invite you to read the paper, but it's not necessary. But it allows to connect in different ways, and that's why I believe that this industry also is a perfect fit for that, for those effects, those economic effects.
Thank you all. Sorry,
Yeah.
Patrick, you want to say something else?
Do you want me to, I'm sorry.
No, I thought you want to add something.
No, I'm good. I think we're all
Okay,
done.
thank
This
you all
is a great
again.
session. This
And
is a
also
great
to our
session.
audience for joining us early in the morning, the last day of the conference. Now we're going to have a small coffee break, but we will have one more session and we look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you.